Before the story starts, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
The sun was just starting to set, painting the quiet neighborhood in shades of orange and gold. Everything looked calm, peaceful even. But for Alex, today was anything but calm. He had lived in this small community for a few months, keeping to himself, paying his bills on time, and never causing trouble. He thought that was all it took to live peacefully. He was wrong. HOA Karen, as everyone called her behind her back, was already patrolling the streets in her little golf cart. She wore her usual expression of anger mixed with authority, like she owned the neighborhood. Her sunglasses reflected the fading sunlight, but they couldn't hide the sharpness in her eyes. Karen had a reputation for being strict, almost obsessively strict. If someone left a leaf on the wrong side of the sidewalk, she would notice. If a lawn decoration was even a tiny bit crooked, she would find a way to complain about it. And today, she had her eyes on Alex. Alex had done nothing wrong, or at least nothing worth Karen's attention. He had parked his car perfectly in his spot, kept his mailbox neat, and trimmed his small lawn just the way the HOA rules demanded. But Karen was looking for drama, and that made him a target. He could feel her stare even from inside his house, behind the drawn curtains. Earlier that day, he had been outside, watering his plants, when Karen approached him. Her golf cart squeaked against the pavement, coming to a sudden stop. "Alex," she said, her voice loud enough to make the neighbors peek out their windows. "I need to talk to you about your trash can." Alex looked down at the trash can. It was ordinary, clean, and exactly where it was supposed to be according to the HOA rules. He blinked. It's in the correct spot?" he asked politely. Karen's eyes narrowed. "It may look correct to you," she said, "but I've noticed it's been slightly facing the wrong way the last 2 days. You need to correct that immediately." Alex swallowed hard, trying to keep calm. "I can adjust it?" he asked. "Yes," she said firmly. "Now." With that, she sped off in her golf cart, leaving Alex standing there, dumbfounded. He shook his head and muttered under his breath, "Seriously?" That should have been enough to make him laugh it off. But there was something in Karen's tone that made him uneasy. It wasn't just a complaint about rules. There was a sense of personal vendetta. She seemed almost eager to make his life difficult. And Alex had learned that when HOA Karen got personal, things could get ugly fast. He went inside his house and tried to focus on something else, anything else. He poured a cup of coffee, sat down by the window, and watched the sun dip lower in the sky. But he couldn't shake the feeling that today was going to be different. Something was in the air, something heavier than usual. And he was right. Around 6 in the evening, he heard the familiar ring of his phone. It was an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hello," he said cautiously. "Alex, this is HOA Karen," the voice boomed over the line. "I need to speak to you immediately. There are complaints. Serious complaints. If you don't respond, I'll be forced to take further action." Alex's heart skipped a beat. He had dealt with Karen before, but she had never called him directly, not like this. Her voice carried an urgency that was almost terrifying. But at the same time, it sounded suspicious. Something about the way she said serious complaints made him wonder if she was exaggerating, maybe even lying. Okay, he replied slowly. "What complaints?" There was a pause. Then Karen said, "About your behavior." "You know what I mean." Alex frowned. He had no idea what she was talking about. He was polite, quiet, and kept to himself. He didn't bother anyone. "I'm sorry. I don't understand," he said. "You will," Karen said, her tone sharp and threatening. "I'll be stopping by tonight. You need to be ready." Click. She hung up. Alex sat there, stunned. He had faced difficult neighbors before, but HOA Karen was on a whole different level. The way she spoke made it clear she wasn't just enforcing rules, she was trying to intimidate him. And now she was coming to his house. He quickly looked around, making sure everything was in perfect order. Trash cans in place, lawn trimmed, everything neat. It didn't matter. Karen would find something to complain about. He knew that. But Alex had a secret that no one in the neighborhood could imagine. No one, not even Karen or her husband, had any idea who he really was. On the surface, he was just another quiet neighbor, minding his own business. But beneath that calm exterior, he was connected to people most civilians only saw on TV, the kind of people who didn't take threats lightly. He sipped his coffee and tried to calm his racing mind. Karen might think she had the power tonight, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. And Alex planned to let her learn that lesson the hard way. As the sun disappeared completely, the streetlights flickered on. Shadows stretched across the pavement, and the quiet neighborhood seemed even quieter than before. Then he saw Karen's golf cart rolling slowly toward his house. She was scanning the street like a hawk, looking for any minor imperfection she could complain about. Alex moved to the window and watched her approach. He smiled faintly, almost amused. She had no idea what was coming. And as she parked and stepped out, he knew one thing for sure: tonight was going to be unforgettable. Karen marched up to his door, knocking loudly, her heels clicking against the concrete. Her husband stayed back near the cart, watching silently, probably thinking this was just another petty argument that would pass. He had no idea. Alex opened the door calmly. "Good evening, Karen," he said politely, hiding the tension in his chest. Karen's eyes narrowed. "We need to talk," she said. "Yes, we do," Alex replied. And in that moment, the calm smile on his face was more than just politeness, it was a warning. She had no idea that behind that smile was someone who could change everything in an instant. Karen crossed her arms, glaring. "You're not taking this seriously." "I am," Alex said softly, stepping aside to let her in. "But maybe you should take a moment to calm down first." The tension hung in the air, thick and heavy, like a storm ready to break. Karen fumed, muttering complaints under her breath, but Alex stayed calm, almost too calm. He let her talk, letting her words fill the room, while he quietly assessed the situation. Because Alex knew something Karen didn't, he wasn't just any neighbor. And tonight, that fact would become painfully clear. The evening air was cool, but the tension inside Alex's house made it feel like a heat wave. Karen had barely stepped in before she started pacing. Her shoes clicked against the hardwood floor with each step, like a metronome counting down to disaster. Her husband stood by the door, arms crossed, trying to look calm, but his eyes darted nervously between his wife and Alex. Alex didn't move. He stayed where he was, leaning against the kitchen counter, a calm smile on his face. He had learned long ago that panic only gave power to people like Karen. Tonight, he decided, he would stay calm no matter what she said. "I can't believe you think it's okay to," Karen began, her voice rising. She stopped suddenly, noticing Alex's unshaken expression. Her words faltered for a moment. "You're mocking me," she snapped. "No," Alex said slowly, his voice steady, "I'm just listening." Karen's husband finally spoke. "Karen, maybe we should just let it go. It's not that big of a deal." His tone was firm, but there was an edge of fear in it. He could sense something in Alex that he didn't understand. Something dangerous. "Not that big of a deal?" Karen scoffed. "He's breaking the rules." He's, she waved her hands, searching for the right insult. "He's disrespecting the neighborhood." Alex tilted his head slightly, as if studying a puzzle. "I've checked all the rules again," he said, "and everything I've done is within the guidelines." "Maybe you're overreacting?" His calmness was almost unnerving. Karen's face turned red, and she opened her mouth, ready to argue. But Alex interrupted her with a quiet, almost casual remark, "You're upset. I understand that. But yelling won't change the facts." Her husband stepped closer. "Karen, maybe it's time to go home and calm down. You're making this worse." Karen froze, her eyes narrowing at him. "Don't tell me what to do," she hissed. Alex watched silently, noticing the tension between them. It wasn't just him that Karen underestimated, it was her own husband. She had always thought she was the boss, the one with all the power. Tonight, she was about to find out how wrong she was. Karen suddenly slammed her hand on the counter, startling Alex. I don't care. I will not let him get away with this. Alex raised an eyebrow. Get away with what? He asked, genuinely curious. Karen hesitated, caught off guard by his calm question. You know what you're doing, she snapped. Alex leaned forward slightly. I honestly don't, he said. But his eyes were sharp, alert. Behind the calm surface, he was calculating. Every move she made, every word she said, he noticed it all. Karen's husband took a deep breath. Look, maybe we should call the HOA office and clear this up, he suggested, his voice trying to mediate. Alex shook his head slowly. That won't be necessary, he said. I've already checked. Everything is in order. Karen's jaw tightened. She had expected him to panic, to apologize, to scramble and beg for forgiveness. But he didn't. And that frustrated her more than anything. You're too calm, she said, her voice trembling slightly. It's like you don't even care. I do care, Alex replied softly, but there's a difference between caring and panicking. You should know that by now. Karen's husband finally stepped back, crossing his arms again. He could feel the air shift. There was something about Alex's presence, something quiet but powerful. He didn't understand it, but he sensed that interfering too much could make things worse. Karen, however, refused to back down. She began pacing again, muttering rules, complaints, and neighborhood policies. Alex listened, occasionally nodding, letting her vent. He didn't interrupt, but each time she spoke, he gathered more information about her personality, her triggers, her patterns. After a few minutes, Karen paused, breathing heavily. I will not let you get away with this, she said again. Alex's smile remained. I'm not trying to get away with anything, he said. But it seems like you want to make this a bigger problem than it really is. Karen's husband finally spoke up again. Maybe she just wants to feel in control, he said quietly, almost to himself. Alex's mind raced. He had noticed it before, Karen's obsession with control, her need to dominate situations. It was a weakness. And if used carefully, it could turn the conflict in his favor. But he had to be patient. He couldn't act too soon. Karen, still fuming, grabbed her phone from her purse. I'm calling the cops, she shouted. Alex didn't flinch. He watched her calmly, almost like a predator watching an unaware prey. Go ahead, he said softly. I'm sure they'll want to hear the full story from both sides. Karen's eyes widened. She wasn't used to being challenged like this. And something in Alex's tone made her hesitate. She felt a tiny, creeping doubt, a dangerous feeling for someone like her. Are you serious? She asked, her voice shaky now. I'm always serious, Alex replied. Especially when people make threats they can't follow through on. Karen's husband swallowed nervously. He could sense the tension building, like a storm about to break. And in that moment, he realized that this was not going to be a simple HOA complaint. This was something bigger. Much bigger. Karen, however, was not ready to leave. She stood there, fuming, her hands on her hips, trying to look confident. But Alex could see it, her cracks, her frustration, her uncertainty. He didn't move a muscle. He didn't say a word. He just watched. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Karen's breathing was uneven. Her husband shifted his weight, glancing nervously at Alex. And Alex? He remained calm, composed, almost untouchable. Finally, Karen stomped toward the door, muttering threats and complaints under her breath. But before she left, she shot Alex one last glare. This isn't over, she spat. Alex smiled faintly, watching her leave. No, he said softly to himself. It's just getting started. As the door closed, a sense of quiet returned to the house. But Alex knew this was only the beginning. Karen's attempts to intimidate him would continue, but she had no idea that he was always 3 steps ahead. And tonight, that advantage would be more important than ever. Outside, the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Karen and her husband walked back to their golf cart, unaware that Alex's calm demeanor was hiding secrets they could never imagine. Secrets that, if revealed, would change everything. And as Alex watched them drive away, he knew that the real conflict was only beginning. Night had fully fallen over the quiet neighborhood, but Alex's house was far from quiet. The air inside was charged with tension, almost like electricity before a storm. Karen had left, but her threat hung in the air, unspoken but loud. She would be back. Alex sat on the couch, his mind racing. He didn't panic, not even a little. That wasn't his style. He had dealt with difficult people before, people who thought they could intimidate him. And tonight, Karen was about to learn the hard truth. He heard a faint sound outside, footsteps. Karen. He wasn't surprised. She had a habit of returning when she felt she hadn't won. Quietly, he walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. Sure enough, there she was, creeping along the sidewalk, phone in hand, muttering to herself. She just doesn't quit, he murmured. But inside, he smiled. Because Karen didn't realize she was walking into his game. Karen rang the doorbell again, but this time, Alex didn't rush to open the door. He let the bell ring several times, long and loud. Each chime echoed in the house like a drumbeat, counting down to her realization, this time, she wouldn't get the reaction she expected. Finally, Karen banged on the door. Alex! Open up, she shouted. He appeared calmly in the doorway. Good evening again, Karen, he said softly. His tone was polite, but it carried a weight she couldn't place. Karen's eyes narrowed. You think this is funny? She demanded. No, Alex replied evenly. I think it's interesting. You seem very committed to this little battle of ours. Karen's husband trailed behind, frowning. Karen, maybe we should just go, he muttered. But Karen ignored him. She stepped closer, her anger rising. I've had enough of your attitude, she shouted. I'm calling the cops, right now. You can't treat people like this. Alex didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned casually against the doorframe. Call them, he said softly. I'm curious to see how they handle this. Karen froze. His calmness wasn't just confidence, it was a warning. She had never met anyone who didn't flinch under her threats. And now, she felt a creeping doubt. Are you serious? She asked, voice trembling slightly. I'm always serious, Alex said. Especially when people overestimate their own power. Her husband's frown deepened. Karen, maybe you should just let it go, he whispered. But even he could feel the tension building, a quiet danger in the room he couldn't understand. Karen, frustrated, finally raised her voice. You think you're untouchable, don't you? Alex's eyes gleamed faintly, almost like a shadow passing over them. I don't think I'm untouchable, he said softly. I know I'm prepared. Karen's husband glanced at Alex, sensing something beneath the calm words. But before he could ask, Karen blurted out, prepared? Prepared for what? Alex tilted his head. Prepared for someone who doesn't follow the rules, or tries to make threats they can't keep. His voice was gentle, almost casual, but there was a hidden edge, a subtle warning she didn't recognize. Karen's anger was rising, but so was her fear. She didn't know why, but something about Alex made her uneasy. He wasn't like the neighbors she was used to. He wasn't intimidated by her, and he wasn't scared of her. That was dangerous. I don't like this, she said finally, stepping back. You're making me feel unsafe. Alex's calm smile didn't falter. Feeling unsafe? He echoed softly. That's interesting. Because I haven't moved a muscle, haven't raised my voice, haven't broken a single rule. But you feel unsafe. Karen blinked, caught off guard. He had turned her fear into the story now. She had no idea how to respond. Her husband cleared his throat. Karen, maybe we should leave for tonight. You're getting too worked up. Karen shook her head violently. No! I'm not done. He needs to be held accountable. Alex raised one eyebrow. Held accountable for what exactly? Karen faltered, searching for words. But before she could answer, her phone rang. She answered it quickly, pressing it to her ear. Yes, yes. I'm at his house. I need them here now. Alex didn't move. He watched her carefully. Calling the cops again? He asked softly. Karen's eyes widened. Yes. You can't just. Interesting, Alex said quietly. Do you know how complicated things can get when law enforcement gets involved? Karen froze. Something in his tone made her pause. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement. A calm, quiet statement that carried a hidden weight. She couldn't explain it, but suddenly she felt nervous. Her husband noticed too. Karen, maybe. But Alex interrupted him. You should know something, he said calmly, leaning slightly closer. I have connections. People who handle situations like this every day. Karen laughed nervously. Connections? What do you mean? Alex's eyes didn't leave hers. I know people who make sure things like this don't get out of hand. People who notice when threats are made without cause. Karen's laughter died. Her body stiffened. You're not just another neighbor, she whispered. No, Alex said softly, almost a whisper. I'm not. And that's why you should think carefully before making your next move. Karen's husband stepped forward, now fully aware that this was no ordinary argument. Karen, maybe we should go. Now. Karen's hands trembled slightly, and for the first time, she hesitated. Alex noticed it immediately. That hesitation was everything. He didn't move, didn't push. He let the weight of his calm presence do all the work. After a long, tense moment, Karen finally turned and stomped back to her golf cart. Her husband followed silently, both of them glancing back at Alex. But this time, there was a new understanding, something unspoken, something heavy in the air. Alex closed the door slowly and leaned against it. He let out a quiet breath, but his mind was already moving ahead. This wasn't over. Karen would come back, stronger, more determined, more dangerous. But she didn't know one thing, Alex was always prepared. Always 3 steps ahead. And tonight, he had shown her the first hint of what that meant. The night had grown colder, and the street outside was empty, quiet, almost too quiet. Inside, Alex sat in his living room, the dim light from a single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. He wasn't just thinking about Karen, he was thinking ahead, planning for the storm she would inevitably bring. He heard a soft knock at the door. It wasn't Karen's heavy stomping, this was different. Calm. Hesitant. Curious. He opened the door a crack and saw Karen's husband standing there, looking nervous, his eyes darting around as if the shadows themselves were watching him. Can we talk? He asked quietly. His voice was almost a whisper. Alex stepped aside. Of course, he said, motioning for him to enter. Karen's husband didn't move at first, as if unsure whether he could trust Alex. But something in Alex's calm demeanor made him step inside. Once in the living room, he sank into a chair, hands shaking slightly. I don't know what's happening with my wife, he said finally. She's out of control. And you're not like anyone I've ever met. Alex leaned forward slightly, keeping his voice calm, almost soothing. I'm not. And that's exactly why you're worried. She doesn't understand who she's dealing with. The man swallowed hard. You're saying she's wrong about me, about you? Alex smiled faintly. I'm saying she underestimates everything. Not just me, but the consequences of her actions. Karen's husband shook his head, confusion and fear mixed on his face. But, why are you so calm? Why aren't you afraid? Alex's smile didn't falter. Fear doesn't help with situations like this. Calm thinking does. Observation does. Knowing the right people does. The words made Karen's husband freeze. Something about the way Alex said the right people made the hairs on his neck stand up. Right people? He echoed, voice low. Yes, Alex said softly. People who notice when rules are bent, people who see when threats are made. People who make sure justice is done, quietly, efficiently, and without mistakes. Karen's husband's eyes widened slightly, realization dawning. You're not just some guy in the neighborhood, he said slowly. You're connected to something important, aren't you? Alex leaned back, his expression calm but sharp. Let's just say I have connections that most people don't even know exist. A pause. Karen's husband's face went pale. He didn't fully understand, but he sensed danger. Real danger. Not the kind you call the police for, but something deeper, something serious. Okay, he said finally, voice shaking. I think I understand. But, why tell me this? Alex's eyes glinted faintly in the dim light. Because you need to know the truth before it's too late. Your wife, she's making a mistake. And I don't make mistakes. Not about people who try to threaten me. Not about rules, not about consequences. Karen's husband leaned back in his chair, trying to process the words. So, what do you mean? He asked. Alex paused for a moment, letting the weight of the silence settle. I mean, if she calls the cops, they'll see things differently. They'll see the facts, and I don't think she's ready for that. Not even close. Karen's husband's eyes widened. Facts? What facts? Alex's lips curled into a faint smile. Let's just say. I know how to make situations disappear. Or at least, I know the right people who do. The man's breath caught. Disappear? You mean, like FBI? Or something like that? Alex nodded slightly, still calm. Something like that? But you don't need to worry. I'm not here to harm anyone. Not your wife, not you. But I am here to make sure rules, threats, and lies are handled correctly. Karen's husband's mind was spinning. He had thought this was a simple argument over lawn decorations and trash cans. He had thought he understood his wife's obsession with rules. But now, he realized he had no idea what he had been walking into. Why didn't she tell me? He whispered. She has no idea who she's messing with, does she? Alex's calm eyes met his. Not a clue. And that's why tonight, she's going to learn a lesson. But not from me. From the reality that comes when people overstep and underestimate what they think is ordinary. The man swallowed hard, glancing nervously at the window. She's coming back, isn't she? Alex smiled faintly. Yes. But she won't be ready. She doesn't know what's coming. And that is the difference between fear and calm preparation. Karen's husband leaned back, overwhelmed. He realized something important. The woman he had thought he knew, his wife, his partner, was now in danger of learning just how out of her depth she really was. And he couldn't stop it. Alex stood, walking slowly to the window, looking out at the empty street. People like her, he said quietly, almost to himself, they don't understand the power of observation. The power of knowing who you're dealing with. And tonight, she will find out. Karen's husband watched him, still shaking. I can't believe this, you're connected, really? Alex didn't answer. He just looked back at him, calm, unwavering, dangerous in his quiet way. Believe what you need to believe, he said softly. But know this, rules are rules. Threats are threats. And people like her, they always learn the hard way. The man nodded slowly, realizing he was now caught between his wife's obsession and a force he didn't understand. He knew one thing for sure, Alex was not ordinary. And the next confrontation would change everything. Outside, a shadow moved along the street. Karen. Coming back for round 2. But she didn't know what was waiting. She didn't know that the quiet man she tried to intimidate had powers, connections, and patience far beyond her imagination. And Alex? He stood by the window, calm as ever. Ready. Waiting. Watching. Because tonight, the twist wasn't just in the rules she thought she controlled, it was in the person she underestimated the most. And that twist was about to hit her like a storm she could never escape. The quiet of the night was broken by a sudden sound, the crunch of tires on gravel outside Alex's house. Karen's golf cart had returned. She was determined, angry, and oblivious to the storm she was stepping into. Her husband followed silently, clearly nervous now, sensing that something in Alex's calm demeanor wasn't ordinary. Alex sat near the window, his eyes tracking every movement outside. He wasn't tense. Not at all. In fact, he looked almost amused. A faint smile played on his lips. He had been expecting this. He had seen Karen coming before she even knew she would. Karen jumped out of the golf cart, stomping toward the front door, phone in hand, ready to call the cops. Her husband called after her, "Karen, maybe wait." But she ignored him. She had one goal: intimidate Alex and prove her power. Alex opened the door slowly, calm, collected, and utterly in control. "Evening, Karen," he said softly, as if greeting an old friend. Karen stopped in her tracks, eyes narrowing. "I'm done waiting," she snapped. "I've called the cops, and they're on their way. You can't just act like this." Alex's calm gaze didn't waver. He leaned slightly against the doorframe. "Cops? That's interesting." Karen's husband stepped closer, whispering, "Karen, maybe you should listen." But Karen wasn't listening. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" she shouted. Alex's voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. "Untouchable? No. But I am connected. And connected means consequences. Real ones, not just HOA letters and threats." Karen blinked. "Connected? Connected to what?" Alex smiled faintly, the first real hint of the truth in his eyes. "To people who see the real threats. People who handle situations quietly, efficiently, professionally." Karen's heart skipped. Something about his tone made her uneasy, but she tried to mask it with anger. You can't." Alex interrupted her, calm as a river, yet sharper than a knife. "You think this is about rules? Trash cans? Lawn edges? No. It's about overstepping. Threatening people who are prepared. And you've done exactly that." Karen's husband's jaw tightened. "Alex, what are you saying?" Alex didn't flinch. He walked slowly to the window, peering outside as if reading invisible signals in the street. "I'm saying," he said softly, "that when someone tries to intimidate me, the rules change. And tonight, the consequences are real." Karen's hands shook. "Consequences? What do you mean?" Alex turned toward her, the calm expression now replaced with something sharper, almost dangerous. "I'm connected to the people who enforce the law in ways you don't see on TV. People who notice when lies are told, when threats are made. People who make sure justice happens, quietly, professionally, and with precision." Karen's jaw dropped. You mean FBI? Is that real?" Alex's smile was calm, almost gentle, but his eyes were steel. "Yes. Real. And I am connected. Not as a civilian, not as someone you can bully or intimidate. Connected. Which means every move you've made tonight has been noticed, recorded, and will have consequences." Her husband's face turned pale. He finally understood the danger she had walked into. Karen, she didn't realize. Karen's face twisted in disbelief, anger, and panic. No! You can't. This is insane. I'm just enforcing the rules." I. Alex stepped closer, calm but in control. "Rules? Enforcement? That's fine when done correctly. But threats? Personal attacks? Harassment? That crosses a line. And people connected to my world notice. Always." Karen's knees weakened slightly. She had no idea that the quiet neighbor she had been obsessively targeting was someone with real power, someone who could make law enforcement itself bend quietly to ensure justice. Her usual confidence, the kind that allowed her to lecture neighbors with authority, evaporated. Alex continued, voice even, calm, almost hypnotic. "You don't need to be scared of me. I'm not here to harm you. But I am here to show that overstepping comes with consequences. And tonight, you've overstepped. Badly." Karen's husband swallowed hard. "Karen, listen to him. You need to back down." Karen tried to shout, but her voice faltered. She felt fear for the first time in months, or maybe years. I don't believe you," she whispered. Alex's calm gaze didn't leave hers. "Believe what you need. But know this, every threat, every complaint, every attempt to intimidate, it's on record. And when someone connected notices, it's not just a warning. It's a lesson. One you won't forget." Karen's husband finally realized the truth. "Karen, you've made a huge mistake." Karen's hand trembled over her phone. She had wanted to control the situation, to assert authority. But now, everything had shifted. The balance of power was gone. She wasn't in charge. Not tonight. Not with Alex. Alex stepped back slightly, his presence calm but commanding. "Consider this the first, and only, warning. Overstep again, and the next lesson won't be gentle. You'll see what real consequences feel like. And trust me, you don't want to find out." Karen's lips trembled. She tried to respond, but no words came out. Her husband finally took her arm gently and said, "Let's go home." Karen looked back at Alex one last time. Her expression was a mix of fear, disbelief, and anger. But she knew deep down that she had underestimated him. And underestimating someone connected to the FBI was a mistake she could never undo. As they left, Alex closed the door slowly, the calm smile returning to his face. He poured himself a drink and sat down, still alert, still calculating. Karen had been given her first real lesson. But the night was far from over. Outside, the streetlights flickered, casting long shadows over the quiet neighborhood. Alex could see everything clearly from his window. Every movement, every reaction, it all mattered. He wasn't just a neighbor. He was prepared, connected, and always watching. And tonight, the real power wasn't in the HOA rules, or the threats, or the complaints. The real power was in the calm observer who knew exactly what was coming, and was ready for it. Because when someone underestimated him, that was the moment the real game began. The night air had grown colder, the kind of cold that makes shadows sharp and streets silent. Karen's fury hadn't faded, if anything, it had grown. She was pacing inside her house, muttering threats under her breath, gripping her phone like a weapon. Tonight, she was determined to prove she had power over Alex. She dialed the police, her fingers trembling slightly. Yes, I need to report a neighbor. He's threatening me. No, he's intimidating me," she said, her voice loud and frantic. Meanwhile, across the street, Alex sat quietly in his living room. He didn't move. He didn't frown. He didn't even flinch. He had already expected this. The cops would come, sure, but they wouldn't see the story Karen thought she was telling. Not in the way she wanted. A soft knock echoed at the door. Alex didn't hurry. He let it ring several times, long and tense, letting the sound fill the room. Then, he walked to the door calmly, opened it, and saw two uniformed officers standing there. "Good evening, officers," Alex said politely, his calm tone in stark contrast to Karen's frantic energy across the street. The taller officer looked him over, then glanced at the empty street. "Are you Alex?" he asked. "Yes," he replied softly. "How can I help you?" The officer glanced at his partner. "We got a call from your neighbor. She claims she's being threatened." Alex's calm smile never left his face. "Threatened? I see. Well, I assure you, I have done nothing illegal. Perhaps she misinterpreted my actions?" The taller officer raised an eyebrow. Misinterpreted? Alex nodded gently. I've followed all HOA rules. I've spoken politely. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't acted aggressively. I think you'll find, if you look closely, there is nothing to report. Meanwhile, across the street, Karen's panic grew. She was pacing by her window, yelling at the police through the phone. He's dangerous. He's intimidating me. He's, her words faltered as she tried to explain. But the calm, almost effortless control Alex had over the situation was already in motion. Inside, Alex gestured subtly to the officers. Please, come in. I'd like to clarify everything before any misunderstandings escalate. They stepped inside, still cautious, still scanning the room. Alex remained calm, polite, and completely in control. I respect the law, he said softly, and I respect your time. Let me show you everything. He led them through the living room, the kitchen, even outside briefly, pointing to his neatly parked car, trash cans in proper position, and his lawn, perfectly trimmed. Every detail was in place. Every action was within the rules. The officers exchanged glances. Everything seems normal, one said quietly. Alex nodded. Exactly. And yet, someone chose to escalate a minor disagreement into an official complaint. Perhaps, out of personal frustration? His voice was calm, but there was a subtle edge, a warning hidden in politeness. Back across the street, Karen realized something terrifying. Alex wasn't just calm. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't even defensive. He was completely untouchable in a way she had never experienced before. Every move she made, every panic-filled call, was being handled perfectly. Her frustration and fear were useless weapons against him. Alex returned inside and closed the door behind the officers. Now, he said softly, if you need any further information, I am fully cooperative. But I hope you can see, the facts are clear. No threat, no intimidation, no illegal activity. The officers nodded slowly. Understood, the taller one said. We'll take this back to the station, but from what we see, everything seems in order. As they left, Alex shut the door and leaned against it, his calm smile returning. Across the street, Karen stared at him through the window, frozen. She had expected chaos, panic, maybe even fear. But what she saw instead was quiet power, a presence she could not challenge. Her husband stepped beside her, whispering, Karen. I think you underestimated him. Karen shook her head, still fuming but now mixed with fear. No, he's just lucky. He's lucky. Alex walked to the window, watching them from across the street. He didn't gloat. He didn't mock. But his presence alone was enough to make them realize, this was a neighbor who was anything but ordinary. A soft chime from his phone reminded him of the subtle messages he had received earlier that day, from people who notice things like Karen's obsession, people who know how to handle delicate situations. He smiled faintly. He wasn't alone. And that made the night even safer, for him. Karen, pacing nervously, finally realized the depth of her mistake. Every threat she had made, every complaint, every attempt to intimidate had been seen, recorded, and handled in a way she couldn't understand. And worse, she knew she couldn't undo it. Her husband whispered again, more firmly this time. Karen, we need to step back. Tonight he's the one in control. Karen's lips trembled. She wanted to argue, to assert herself, to regain power, but the calm, deliberate control Alex had displayed left her speechless. Every instinct told her to back down. Every thought told her she had crossed a line she could never fix. Alex watched them leave. Calm. Patient. Ready. He knew Karen's obsession wouldn't disappear overnight, but now she understood one undeniable fact: she had picked the wrong person to challenge. As he closed the blinds, a soft smile touched his lips. The night had been tense. The escalation had reached its peak. But the lesson had been delivered. Quietly. Professionally. without a single raised voice. Because that was the real power of someone who was connected, prepared, and always 3 steps ahead. And for Karen, the lesson was unforgettable. Outside, the street returned to silence. The storm had passed, but its imprint remained. One neighbor had learned something about quiet power, calm observation, and consequences. The other, well, Karen still had her anger. But now, it was tempered with fear. And Alex? He sat back in his chair, calm, composed, and already thinking 3 steps ahead to whatever Karen would try next. Because the game wasn't over. Not yet. The street was quiet again. The police had left. Karen and her husband had driven back home, both shaken, their anger now replaced with unease. For the first time, Karen felt powerless. She had tried to dominate, to intimidate, to control the situation, but none of it worked. And now, she knew deep down that she had crossed a line she could never undo. Alex sat in his living room, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating his calm face. He poured himself a cup of tea, slow and deliberate, savoring the moment. Outside, the neighborhood seemed peaceful, but Alex knew better. Tension still lingered like a faint echo, a reminder that human nature rarely changed overnight. He glanced out the window at Karen's house across the street. Through the blinds, he could see her pacing back and forth, muttering under her breath. Her husband leaned against the wall, arms crossed, silent but alert. They were both aware now, without words, of just how serious things had become. Alex's mind wasn't on revenge or anger. He didn't need either. His goal had never been to escalate the situation. It had been simple: establish boundaries, enforce respect, and quietly remind people that some lines shouldn't be crossed. And tonight, he had done just that. He leaned back in his chair, thinking about the events of the evening. Karen's obsession with control, her blind insistence on enforcing petty rules, her desperate need to prove authority. It had almost been amusing. Almost. But what made her dangerous wasn't her anger, it was her inability to see when she had underestimated someone. And that was a mistake she would never make again. A soft chime from his phone reminded him of the messages he had received earlier, silent confirmations from connections that had been monitoring the situation. Every move Karen made had been recorded, analyzed, and archived. No mistakes, no surprises. Just quiet observation and preparation. Alex smiled faintly, a mixture of calm and satisfaction. The night's events were over, but the lesson had been delivered. Karen would think twice before trying to challenge him again. And her husband, well, he had witnessed something he would never forget. Still, Alex wasn't complacent. He knew that people like Karen didn't change easily. Her obsession with rules and authority would simmer. Perhaps tomorrow, or the next day, she would return cautious, calculating, testing boundaries. But if she did, she would know exactly who she was dealing with. And that knowledge was more powerful than any threat. The streetlights cast long shadows across the neighborhood, creating a pattern of light and darkness that mirrored the evening's events. Calm on the surface, but beneath that calm, currents of tension and caution flowed quietly. Alex understood these currents better than anyone. He had learned long ago that patience, observation, and preparation were far stronger than anger or noise. He sipped his tea, letting the warmth settle. In moments like this, he could almost feel the world slowing down. The neighborhood was silent, peaceful, ordinary, but he knew better. Ordinary people, ordinary rules, ordinary threats, they all existed only on the surface. And beneath that surface, reality was far more complicated. Far more dangerous. Far more controlled. From across the street, Karen's voice drifted faintly, speaking to her husband. We can't let this happen again. He's dangerous. Her husband didn't reply, only nodding slightly. He had seen the calm, quiet authority Alex wielded. He had seen how one person, patient and prepared, could command respect and control a situation without raising a voice. And he knew that tonight, they had learned a truth that couldn't be forgotten. Alex leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. The night had tested patience, composure, and perception. And he had passed. But he also knew this was only the beginning. In life, the people who underestimated him rarely learned from one encounter. But for now, that was not his concern. Tonight, the lesson was enough. A soft breeze drifted through the slightly open window, carrying the faint smell of evening air, grass, and the lingering tension of the night. Alex inhaled slowly, appreciating the moment. He had not raised a hand, not shouted, not threatened. He had only been calm, observant, and connected. And that had been enough. He glanced one last time across the street. Karen had stopped pacing, standing silently now, staring at her house as if trying to process everything that had happened. Her husband remained beside her, quiet, thoughtful. They were both aware now, without a single word, that their neighborhood, their sense of control, and their assumptions had all shifted. Alex turned back to his living room, letting the quiet wash over him. The tea in his hand had gone cold, but he didn't mind. The night was not about comfort, it was about lessons learned, boundaries respected, and power understood. And somewhere, deep inside, he felt the faint stirrings of curiosity. Karen would not disappear quietly. She would return, driven by obsession, frustration, or sheer disbelief. And when she did, Alex would be ready. Always prepared, always calm, always 3 steps ahead. For the moment, though, there was quiet. The lesson had been delivered. Respect had been earned. And the neighborhood, though unaware, had witnessed something extraordinary, the power of patience, observation, and quiet authority. Alex set his cup down gently, stood, and walked to the window once more. Across the street, the shadows were long, the night silent, and the lesson settled firmly in place. Karen had learned something tonight, whether she wanted to or not. And her husband had witnessed it. The game wasn't over. Not even close. But for now, the calm observer had won. And in the quiet of the night, with the soft glow of the streetlights and the distant hum of the neighborhood, one thing was certain. Some neighbors are ordinary. Some neighbors are noisy. Some neighbors enforce rules. And some are connected. Alex smiled faintly, turning away from the window, letting the shadows of the night settle over him. Calm. Patient. Ready. Because the story was far from over.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it.